So today is the last day of the summer sale, and I believe it's ending right at 1 p.m. Eastern, so I'm dropping this video a little bit earlier than usual just in case you see any of the games on this list and like them and want to pick them up at a discount before, the sale is over. And while there might be a few genre-specific sales to get peppered in between now and fall, I think this is the last major sale until we get the autumn sale, which I don't think happens until November, so yeah, all that being said, let's just go ahead and jump right in with a game that a lot of you recommended, and it's a game that I imagine won't take much convincing to get you to give it a shot if you're a fan of Vampire Survivors, and that is Halls of Torment. Normally it's $4.99, so not super expensive, but you can get it at about 25% off at $3.59 right now. Now, I've touched on a few Vampire Survivors clones over the past year or so, but this one might just take the cake in terms of my favorite alternative, and honestly I put it right up there with Gunlocked if you're into a sci-fi twist on the genre, but I digress. Halls of Torment is a top-down ARPG roguelike that is slightly more complex than what you get out of Vampire Survivors, mostly because it has a twin-stick approach where you use the left analog stick to move around and direct your attacks with the right analog stick. True to the formula, you'll be grinding through thousands of enemies in the Halls of Torment, and along the way you'll snatch up loot from barrels, golden trinkets from fallen enemies, armor, and lots of blue gems to grant you XP and in turn level up your character with new traits. These traits being things like increasing your movement speed, widening your area of attack, bumping up your base and critical damage, or improving your defense. On the presentation front, it's a dead ringer for early Diablo, and while at first I wasn't sold on it, after starting it up it really started to grow on me. Vampire Survivors feels like a throwback to the NES era, but Halls of Torment feels like a throwback to early 90s PC fantasy fare, and so far I'm having a lot of fun running back in to see if I can beat my previous survival time and what new things I might unlock. If you're a fan of simpler roguelike experiences but ones that give you a little more build flexibility considering you can also equip armor in this game after downing bosses that land on the field, Halls of Torment is pretty solid for $5 or like $3.50 if you can still get it on sale. And naturally, based on that presentation, it's not taxing the Steam Deck's resources in any significant way, so you can expect a solid 60 frames per second with this one and also some pretty stellar battery life. And speaking of cheaper games that are also retro throwbacks, this next one was one that popped up on my Steam recommended page, I believe, and it sure looks spooky, and since I'm a big fan of PS1 era horror, I had to give it a shot, and that is Okari. Or possibly Okairi, I'm not positive I'm pronouncing this right. Now normally it's $2.99 and it's 10% off right now for like $2.69, so yeah, it's already a pretty cheap game to begin with, but again, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to run around in another low-file VHS style horror game. Now just like when I covered low-poly horror from that Games That Look Like PS1 Games video from a while back, I'm not expecting that this will be a very long game in the traditional sense, but rather I'm guessing this will be more of a walking simulator style experience that can't be more than a couple of hours long, and even that might be generous. And again, I'm just a total sucker for PS1 style J-horror games with VHS filters over them, although to Okari's credit, I believe you can disable this filter if it's not to your liking. I've already started this game, and it runs perfectly steady, and mechanically there's just not a lot going on, save for walking with the left stick, looking with the right stick, and then interacting with objects in the environment using the B button. And honestly, I think that's about all you need for a well-done piece of interactive horror in my book. Do I appreciate more mechanically complex games like Silent Hill from that era? Yes, totally. But I also have love for short titles like this one that lean heavy on environmental storytelling by keeping the mechanics streamlined and the atmosphere foreboding. And that's exactly what Okari's doing here so far. I figure I'll knock this out some night where I really want to creep myself out with a good horror experience because it's hitting all the right notes so far. The premise is that you're a young Japanese girl on her way home from school and you're trying to find your way home because you and your mom have just recently moved. And just like in Chilla's The Convenience Store when you're trying to find your way to the convenience store in almost total darkness, I have the same kind of feeling here trying to find my way home. And now that I've at least gotten over the hurdle of finding my way home, it is incredibly unsettling being peppered with spooky sounds while I'm exploring what appears to be an empty house so far. But if PT taught me anything, it's that something sinister is definitely hanging out in this house, and I can't wait to find out what it is. And predictably, as a retro throwback, deck performance is totally solid at 60 frames per second, so if you're a fan of cheap horror thrills with that low poly aesthetic, this one might be worth checking out. Next up, turning away from small indie horror stories and into big beefy AAA fare, I did go ahead and grab the bundle that included Fallout 4 Game of the Year Edition and Skyrim Anniversary since I only ever had the vanilla Skyrim on PC. I think I got the bundle for about $25. Which is not bad considering these are normally $40 and $50 respectively, so I figure why not go ahead and load up on a couple of big open world adventures. And again, on the Skyrim front, I've never played the special edition and I've only ever had the original vanilla release for PC, so I was hoping that the visuals would be at least a little bit cleaner on this version. And so far, it's looking pretty gorgeous on the Steam Deck. Now, I'm not in any rush to beat Skyrim, rather it's just one of those games where I like to jump in and just sort of chill with it to see where the world takes me. It is a totally gorgeous game, artistically speaking, and still densely packed with interesting things to discover in its world. Plus, it doesn't hurt that the immersion stays pretty solid thanks to probably one of the most iconic soundtracks in gaming. Out of the gate, it defaults to ultra settings for graphics, but the frame rate is pretty inconsistent, so I went ahead and set it to high in the launcher instead, and it still looks really good and stays near 60 pretty much constantly. On the Fallout 4 front, I've always been hit or miss with this series. 3 was great and I really enjoyed it. I skipped New Vegas for the most part, and even though Fallout 4 wasn't everyone's cup of tea, I had a blast with it when it first dropped back in 2015. I mean, sure, it was a little bit rough, but honestly, at this point, what Bethesda game isn't rough? Also, I didn't love the base building in the game that much, but it was an interesting world, and I don't mind having it in my library for the next time I get the itch to load up a bunch of 50s tunes on Spotify and just go running around the wasteland with dog meat again. After firing both of these games up and working through their opening portion on the Steam Deck, these are landing firmly in that sweet spot of being just old enough to perform well at higher settings, but just modern enough that they're still enjoyable to play without looking too dated or anything. Next up is a game that I will not chill with or relax with at all, but rather I will painfully struggle my way through it, crawling if I must to just make tiny degrees of progress, and that is Dark Souls 3. A few people had pointed out in the comments that Dark Souls doesn't go on sale that often, so when I saw that it was on sale for 50% off, where I could snatch it up for $29.99 instead of $59.99, I figured let's go ahead and at least add Dark Souls 3 to the collection. Now, I'm not strictly speaking a Souls veteran, and I've only beaten the first one, and that's because my friends Maro and Daniel helped carry me through to the finish line. But the genre as a whole I very much enjoyed, and while I absolutely hated Bloodborne when I first played it in 2015 as my first Soulsborne experience, those same two friends forced me to try it again, and Bloodborne, along with pretty much every other Souls game, became one of, if not my absolute favorite type of game to play. So far I've beaten Dark Souls, albeit again with a little bit of help, but then I also went on to beat Bloodborne, Sekiro, the Demon Souls remake, and most recently, Elden Ring. And since I'm trying to finish out the last two games in the From catalog that I haven't tackled, I figured I'd go ahead and get another copy of Dark Souls 3 on PC since it was 50% off at $29.99, so I could start chipping away at it on either the Steam Deck or the Ally. So far I'm really trying to sword and board this one instead of leaning too heavily into a magic build, which is what I did for Elden Ring and Demon Souls, but we'll see how long that lasts. Also, all of the captured footage you're seeing here is from the Steam Deck, where I actually ended up starting a fresh game because sadly I did not realize this. Dark Souls 3 does not support cloud saves through Steam, and I had already gotten a few hours in on the Ally. Now apparently you can make a cloud save if you want to do a little legwork and force the files to sync through something like Dropbox, but I'm probably not going to take the time to do that, so I imagine I'll end up finishing this one on the Ally. I mean, assuming I can finish it, because Dark Souls 3 is already showing itself to be exactly the brutal challenge that I would expect, and who knows how long it'll take me to finally roll credits. But I'm committed now, and I have to say it performs really well on the deck and the Ally, although obviously a bit smoother on the latter. On both, I took the graphics down to medium to keep the frame rate closer to 60, since it feels like a must in games like this where timing is so important, but I'd have no hesitation about playing it on either system really, and I guess I'm just ready to be hurt again. And finally, wrapping this list up is a game that a lot of you recommended that has not hurt me so far, but rather has shown itself to be an incredibly relaxing game in between, bigger games like Dark Souls, which can be super stressful, and that is Dave the Diver. Now, I'm still pretty early and I haven't dived too deep into it yet. See what I did there? Diving joke. But this game is just already all sorts of charming, and I can't wait to see what else is going to reveal itself as Dave's adventure rolls on. Right now I'm just doing dives during the day and spending the evening serving drinks and loading up the menu at the restaurant to serve up today's catch, but from what I've seen online, I've barely scratched the surface of everything Dave's going to throw at me here. The characters are interesting, the thrill of catching fish and seeing what lies at the bottom of the blue hole each day is exciting, and Dave's just a really likable main character. So far the gameplay has been perfectly smooth on the Steam Deck, and the entire experience has just felt really well balanced. I love running around serving tea and loading up the menu, but I also love exploring the sea to sort out what new dishes I can add to that menu or what upgrades are waiting for Dave's diving gear as I continue to turn greater profits at the sushi shop. And it seems like every time I think I've seen everything Dave has to offer, some quirky new thing pops up that enhances the game overall without making it feel super disjointed. And that's kind of an accomplishment in and of itself. Tons of games, especially in the slice of life simulator genre, can feel like they're throwing so many things at you that it just starts to feel sort of overwhelming, I guess. But Dave the Diver is handling a ton of fun new things to do with grace, and that's just really refreshing in its own right. All in all, I'd say this is just about the perfect summertime game, and I can't wait to see this one through, probably while I'm eating sushi at a local shop here in Columbus, because that just sounds like a great way to kill some time at some point. Alright, and that's it for this one. Those are my final pickups from the summer sale. I say that, although I'm pretty sure that between when I shot this video and when I'm now editing it, there's a good chance I probably picked up a few more that'll probably, pop up in next month's, hey, here's what I picked up last month's video, but, we'll see what happens. But hey, what about you? Is there anything particularly notable that you grabbed from the summer sale? Something maybe that's entirely new to you that you were just, pleasantly surprised by like I was with Dave the Diver? If so, please let me know in the comments below. As always, thanks so much for your time. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.